Welcome, Jeremy, and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking your time today to watch this, to participate, Jeremy. And really, first, I want to let you know why we're doing this. I feel that the world is full of brilliant people, and often we kind of know them only for what they're popular for. So for example, Jeremy, people think you're a blockchain person or really Bitcoin person, right? And that's all they know about you. And while what you've done with the industry have been amazing and legendary, you also have so many wonderful qualities that you have, and your depth of who you are is very big. And so my goal is to share with the world, share with you viewers, the brilliance of Jeremy today, and really understand who he is, and be motivated and be empowered, and also to support him, and be grateful that there are people that are doing wonderful things in the world, and be inspired that you can do that too. So without further ado, let me introduce you, Jeremy. I've met Jeremy through Bitcoin industry. You have been really amazing because you have such a young energy, and you are young, and it's beautiful that you are, because being young entrepreneur, being able to have a foresight to be active, to participate in life, and to see advantages and opportunities and take on them with persistence is what I think about you. I also, when I think about you, I think about your kindness. I know you're very kind. I've seen you do very nice things. And most importantly too, Jeremy, I've seen you in a decision making where when you saw that something was wrong, you stood up for it and you spoke up. And that takes guts, it takes consistency and strength and empowerment. And most importantly, it takes care for others. And so I would love to have a very dynamic conversation with you. The first thing I want to talk about, I know, Jeremy, everybody wants to know about Bitcoin, especially the price is going up. So everybody wants to talk about it. But that's not what I want to start. I want to talk to you about making world more handsome. And I'm using a handsome word because it means something. I believe that the world deserves to be more beautiful, but when we associate beauty, we think about women, we think about femininity and more nature. So handsome is what you're concentrating your attention on, and let's dive into it. Why did you decide to start skincare?
So it's funny. The goal with Made Man, this men's skincare startup I'm launching, really isn't to make men more handsome. I that's a bit too vain for my taste. But starting a cosmetic company may appear to be a vanity play, but for me, it stems from my own issues. I had this crazy lifestyle, flying around the world, speaking at crypto conferences, not getting enough sleep, not eating well, drinking too much alcohol, not drinking enough water, and my skin suffered as a result. And the skin issues I had as an adolescent really transferred into my 20s. And so I began to realize I needed to take care of my skin. But when I went to men's skincare websites, I was greeted by dozens of products, recommended no less than 5, with the complicated routines, multiple steps, in the different orders, different times of day, on different days of the week, and I couldn't keep up. My skin didn't get better despite me taking the time to invest and create a very customized routine, which is pretty much what every skincare brand does brilliantly today. Like I am not creating a brand to compete with the skincare companies that exist today. If you're a guy that is good at regimen, that's good at routine, there are so many incredible options out there for you. And those men aren't interesting to me as a target demographic. They're probably easier to acquire as an upstart brand. But what I'm trying to do is reach the 55% of men who don't take care of their skin beyond maybe using a bar of soap. That's just bad. Like, You brush your teeth because you want your teeth to be healthy and look good. You use deodorant because you don't want to smell bad. But 55% of men don't take care of their skin, even though your face is 65% of a first impression. It's not about being handsome. It's just about investing in yourself. It's like, why on earth would you be buying expensive cars, clothes, jewelry, material things that are really about appearance when you're not investing in your face? And what we've done with Made Man is we've taken every component of a proactive skincare regimen and packed it down into 2 simple, easy products that take no more than 60 seconds a day combined in total, and cost just more than $1 a day. I want to make skincare obvious. Almost every woman I've ever met takes care of their skin, because if you use makeup, you have to use skincare as well, or else your skin really does terribly. But most men are never taught about skincare, and most men don't want to learn about skincare. The 45% of men who do use skincare, do so because of a woman in their life. But for most men, we aren't taught it. We don't know what to do. We don't want to invest in a complicated routine. We don't want to have to, maintain a complicated routine. And so what I've done is just synthesize the most important components of a skincare regimen and made it as easy as possible.
Yeah. When I think about it, it's also interesting because I think that we have been living in a world, we're advancing away from it, but we've been living in a world where it is almost it's not masculine, or people perceive that a man might perceive that it's not masculine to take care of their skin. And I think that it is the opposite. And so when I say to make the world more handsome, I'm speaking from the eyes of the woman. And
no, you're totally right. I mean, this is why I called it Made Man.
Yeah.
Like any guy that's watched The Godfather or Goodfellas or a mob flick, they know a made man was the best you could be in the mob.
Yeah.
It was like it was the most established. It was what men aspired to be. But obviously, in that usage, it meant you probably had to kill a few people. We're trying to redefine what it means to be a made man.
Right?
We're trying to redefine what it means to be a made man in 2020. And it's really just about being the modern gentleman.
Yes.
It's about investing in yourself, which begins with self-care, and then being the best version of yourself, for your family, for your community, and society at large. We're a very impact-driven organization. We're vegan, we're cruelty-free, we're incorporated as a public benefit corporation, we're a licensed B Corp. A portion of all of our profits go to a charity called Defy Ventures, which teaches incarcerated men entrepreneurship. Because the whole point of this company is to show that it's never too late to be a made man. It's never too late to invest in yourself. But first, what men have to do is, knock down that kind of fragile mask of masculinity, which is so damaging to the psyche and more importantly, damaging to society at large. You said you don't want to talk about politics, but you can look at so many of the world's leaders, and you can see how they're so influenced by their fragile sense of masculinity and how it impacts their decision making. And if we can get away from that, have a world where men are more accepting of themselves and more accepting of what it means to be a man, we'll live in a better place. Everything I do has a social mission. A men's skincare company probably isn't that obvious of a socially conscious organization or world-changing company. But given how few men take care of their skin, I think we really have the opportunity to become the name brand men's skincare company and really start a conversation around masculinity and what it means to be a man.
Yeah. And to a woman, I really believe, to me, when I see a man and I see that he's confident, not confident in his strength to roar, but really confident in who he is, when I see that man takes care of himself, when his skin is well taken care of, when he puts an effort. It's not what he puts on the brand, but how does he wear that clothes. I think it's very handsome, and handsome thing to women, they're attractive.
Oh, I mean, that's what I tell guys. I'm like, if you go and tell a girl that you're like hitting on, like how you have like a thoughtful skincare regimen and how you're so
She's
proud
gonna love it,
of
right?
the
She's gonna be
skincare
like,
brand you work with, girls love that.
yes.
And like it blows guys' mind. But you tell a girl that you take care of your skin, and they're impressed. You know, the fact that you make the effort to look after
They're
yourself.
going to want to go and see how it looks.
Yeah, and self-care is sexy. There's no getting around that. And so we're just really trying to destigmatize this notion of self-care, because if we can get guys to invest in their skin, you know, and invest in themselves, you know, hopefully then we can get them to invest in their mental health and their well-being, and like I said, get them to aspire to be the best version of themselves for everyone.
And Jeremy, I really believe that you are on point, and it is time for that. I believe that you are not fighting a battle that cannot be fought. And in fact, it is so fragile now that that's what it needs. That's what men need, the leaders, to show them that, the leadership is not only in how strong you can be and how many things you can acquire and buy, but it can really come from taking care of self. You mentioned something. You mentioned that you've been driven, and all the decisions you make are made by wanting to have an impact, better impact on the world. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the venture that you have, because you also your hands are full with a lot of interesting things. I don't know how you get them all accomplished. I'm sure you have wonderful people around you with whom you work.
Delegation is key.
Yes. Right. So I would love to talk about that too. What do you guys? What are you looking at? What are the biggest points that are opportunities for those people that are looking at becoming impact entrepreneur, or have the idea that they can make world better? How would you advise them to go about that, or how to scale their company? And as a venture capitalist, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs?
Sure, a bit of context is really important here. You know, I started my career as an entrepreneur. I founded this global educational nonprofit, the Blockchain Education Network. I founded Augur, this one of the very first ICOs, one of the very first, it was first ever utility token. Um, I had created several ventures. I was pretty burnt out from entrepreneurship by late 2015. Joined a venture capital firm in San Francisco, worked there for a couple years as an entrepreneur in residence, ended up getting carry on the fund because I brought so many deals in, and really understanding how a VC firm worked. But by late 2017, I was very disenchanted by the crypto space. You know, the ICO mania had begun, and there was just a lot of garbage in the industry. And I had, spent the better part of the past half decade flying around the world, evangelizing blockchain technology, saying how it was going to make the world better, and yet it hadn't. But I had put all my money and all the wealth I made and everything I had done into crypto. Now crypto had exploded in value, and I was suddenly very wealthy, and I had a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance, just not being able to reconcile the fact that I had made all this money, but I had also said that this technology was going to make the world better, and it hadn't. And the fund I was working at and the fund I had invested in, both of them were doing good deals, but they weren't investing in the sort of companies that made the world better. And I realized I had the sort of capital and credibility to go and launch my own fund in which I could really focus on those sorts of startups, ones that had a tangible, positive impact on humanity. And so that's how I ended up launching Awesome Ventures, which is a kind of a hybrid venture hedge fund focused on the intersection of blockchain technology and social impact. And we're not a traditional social impact fund. There are lots of social impact investment funds, and they have all these key performance indicators, KPIs, that make it very hard to generate an incredible return. But for me, I think of social impact in a much broader lens. It's not you. They're not specific KPIs you have to reach. What I envision when I invest in a company is if this company is successful and it's worth billions of dollars, it will inevitably have affected the lives of a huge amount of people. It will have had a social impact. Now, will that impact have been positive or negative? And that's how I evaluate social impact. Now we have more specific criteria in our investment process, but that's kind of the core or the essence of what I'm talking about. It's not about like direct impact. Like the company does not need to be like alleviating poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. They just need to somehow be making people's lives better. An example I give that no traditional impact venture fund would invest in is Uber. Uber, it eliminates the need for cars, for drunk driving. It gives a lot of people like part-time work. To me, it's like the consummation of the perfect social impact company. Obviously, incredible returns as an investment, but not something that most impact investors would consider an impact investment. And for me, it is. And so we take that kind of perspective when evaluating companies. It's not that they are impact driven necessarily, in terms of like social positive impact, but we invest in entrepreneurs that are trying to change the world in some meaningful way. And we believe that if they're successful, the outcome will be a net positive for humanity. So it's really about the founder's vision and ethos and principles and motivations. I won't invest in the best idea if the founder is just interested in having a big exit and making money. I'm just not interested in those sorts of entrepreneurs. And I'm sure I missed out on a lot of opportunity as a result of that. But people that are driven by money make poor ethical decisions, and those are not the sort of people I want to back.
Yes, interesting. I really appreciate it. And I really believe that we are moving toward the world where there's more and more people that make their decisions investing based on that. And also, I think that, probably big opportunities, they are not so obvious. If they were, things would not be so easy. The biggest, the most hugest always came out through those that are driven, and often they're driven by different values, right? So
and often driven by problems in their own lives or their families' lives or communities' lives. I mean, you hear this all the time, but it's really true. If you're not solving a problem for yourself, you already don't have product market fit, but if you are solving a problem for yourself, you immediately have product market fit, because at least you're solving a problem for one person. But most people create solutions for problems that don't exist. That's a massive issue in the blockchain space. People are trying to create better versions of X, but people don't want a better version.
And some of them, that's the truth. As you said, 2017 was hard. It was hard for me too, seeing that the hopes of dreams of when we hoped that things would scale and self-governance will prevail, and we will show that there's, we don't have to have these rules that are imposed on us. We as an industry, because we stand by this ethos, we can create self structures, and it didn't happen. And so the dream of proof that self-governance will prevail died temporarily, I think, that time. But I think also what decentralized network proved to us, that they still are strong. There's an important point in understanding centralization and decentralization. And I think that, Jeremy, even though our hearts have been hurt, I want to encourage you to still have that hope and believe that things are going to get better because of this technology, and they are getting better. And I know that now finally a lot of structures are actually implementing the technology. And so I think that in 3 years, when we have an interview, or I think in the 3-year term, we'll look back and we'll say, you know what, maybe yes, good
Yeah, I
things
mean,
happen.
look, there's a great aphorism. We overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. That could not be more true with blockchain technology. It is back end infrastructure that fundamentally alters how we communicate and transfer value, and it just doesn't happen overnight. But the great use cases will be implemented, they will shine through. It will just take time, and you have to have patience. That's why I would never considered launching a hedge fund, because a hedge fund is so short term oriented, whereas I wanted to have an investment firm that was really focused on long term outcomes.
When I went to LinkedIn to dig in deeper, though I know you personally and we spent time, and I feel like I know what you've done in the industry for blockchain. And obviously, I'm a huge supporter of what you're doing with the skincare for man, with your Made Man. I also wanted to kind of see, what else Jeremy has done. And I saw that you're actually passionate about teaching, and you've been teaching, and it is one of the listed skills you have. And then I realized, you know what, you really are a great teacher, you're a really great pioneer. And so I would love to expand a little bit on that, on Jeremy, who is driven by teaching, Jeremy, who is driven by guiding.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, I come from a long line of educators in different forms. My dad's a college professor. My parents are both very well educated. My grandmother, back in the 60s, was one of the first female news broadcasters out in Dayton, Ohio, doing educational, like kind of 60-minute style interviews with folks. Like, I think education is perhaps, and the transfer and dissemination of knowledge is perhaps the most critical and important component of being human. It's what's allowed us to evolve to the point that we are. Our ability to orally, and in more recent history, in written form and even digitally, communicate information so it's passed down and saved and stored, and so we can continue to build and progress as a species. And so, the folks that try to, I hate an NDA. I hate the idea that like information should be proprietary. The general notion of intellectual property really bothers me. I
I
think
agree
all I
100%.
think all knowledge, for the most part, now IP does have its place in some circumstances, but I think all knowledge should be free. It should be accessible. Like, I hate how like academic journals have paywalls. It just drives me nuts, because I think people that want to learn should have the opportunity to learn. There shouldn't be any barriers to an education and to understanding. And so I'm always trying to educate. I've been so deeply influenced by, the Stoic philosophers, the ancient Greek philosophers, Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese military theorist. His treatise, The Art of War, has been the most influential book in my life. And I try to approach life and what I offer the world with the same lens, is that, the most valuable thing I can give the world is knowledge. And whether it's my knowledge or sharing knowledge, it's something that's very important to me. And it's why I'm active on social media, kind of always sharing good information, trying to accumulate more information, because I think it's the most important thing that we can do as a species.
I agree 100%. It's interesting how I'm reading right now conscious economics. No, it's not conscious economics. Sacred economics book, and so he really goes through all of the points that you're saying, and so I really believe that it is important to share information. And you're such a great communicator. I love your posts on Facebook, especially those when you open up with vulnerability and you talk about your insights, not just vulnerability of I had a hard time, but you go in deep into kind of a very core and say, look, guys, this is what I'm experiencing. This is the steps that I want to take. And I want to share this with you so that way I can be encouraged to do that. And I've seen you do that year after year after year. And it's been so wonderful to see you progress. And so it's something that I think is a gift and the skills that you have. And I believe that though others can be encouraged to doing that too, to looking at themselves and saying, you know what, I can be better, and and going for it. What would you say to those that say, well, this sounds scary and I don't want to post there? You don't necessarily have to post, but how do you make that internal decision to say, I'm going to look at myself and see what's reflected, and then I'll learn how to fix that, and then I'll apply that.
Well, so this is the thing. Most people believe that they can grow from a place of comfort. They can, like, they can make incremental progress in their lives while still being comfortable. But there's a reason why it's called growing pains. It's because you can't grow without suffering, without struggling. Growth comes from suffering. It comes from being uncomfortable. There's no growth without discomfort. And so yeah, you don't need a post about like where you're struggling and what your problems are on social media, but you should be sharing it with someone, whether it's a therapist, a friend, family, a few people, to help you keep yourself accountable, or at the very least writing it down in a journal, being like, this is what I need to do for myself to be a better person. Because otherwise, you come to the conclusion that this is something I want to work on, this will make me better. But because it's uncomfortable, if there's no one or nothing keeping you accountable, you're more likely than not to just go into your kind of comfortable acquiescence and embrace who you are. And there's something very beautiful about that. There's nothing wrong with embracing who you are and not being invested in growth. I mean, they say ignorance is bliss. I believe that is totally true. But at the same time, if you want to grow, you have to make yourself uncomfortable. You have to be ready to be uncomfortable. And there's no getting around it. That's just the nature of life. I was just introduced to an incredible term. It's called amor fati. It is a Latin term, which is love of one's fate. It's a very stoic concept, but what it means is that no matter what happens to you, no matter what adversity you suffer, you love it. Even if it seems like the worst thing in the world, you understand that it is an opportunity to grow. It is an opportunity to overcome an obstacle. And when you can see every obstacle as an opportunity, your entire life perspective changes. And so it's not easy, it's not straightforward, but when done properly, it can change your life.
Yeah, and that's the kind of basics of stoicism, right? The
Right.
Obstacle is the way in some ways, obviously, and I've practiced stoicism for quite a bit as well. You know, tools to improve our lives and ourselves are so important, and I
Well,
feel
it's so funny. I had Ryan Holiday's books, which are all about stoicism, in my library for years. I had never opened them. I had been given them. It sounded interesting. And then I was reintroduced to his thinking recently and to stoicism. And all of a sudden I started reading his books and about him, and I read Obstacles Away. And I was like, oh my God, this is my life philosophy. Like I never need to write a book on how I do business or how I approach life, because genuinely this Stoic philosophy, this concept of amor fati, it really is how I go about my life. It's the easiest way to explain that whatever modicum of success I have had to anyone else, and I just now refer them to that book. It's I don't even like. I guess for me, it just came naturally. I think it really probably primarily out of my psychedelic experiences, but that just embrace of fate and what is to come and what is happening has radically changed my ability to thrive and survive throughout my adolescence and really kill it in my 20s.
Yeah. And it really comes through knowing that you have that strength and practicing your core strengths, right?
And finding your strength,
yeah.
Making yourself strong, embracing adversity and being willing to just take whatever life throws at you. My mom had remarked a couple of years ago, and it really stuck with me. One thing that she had always found remarkable was no matter how many times I got kicked out of schools or arrested or got in trouble, I might be defeated that night, but the next day I'll get up and I was ready to go, and I was there to do my next thing. I never dwelled on the past. I think people that dwell on the past or worry about the future have no ability to enjoy life in the present.
Yeah.
And that's a very Buddhist philosophy, the concept of presence, being present and being mindful is so important.
And it really comes down to being mindful, being in the moment, and not going back with your thoughts or feelings back to past or traveling into the future. It is definitely
the past. You can only change the future, but the best way to change the future is by focusing on the present.
Right now, right? And it really is an important, I think, journey that every person, I would hope, finds, is that ability to find the presence and let go of the past, let go of the future, and every second by second be present in the now time. So also, I found out that you were in a commission against discrimination. So tell me about that. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so from a young age, I really had three huge heroes in my life, historical figures. It was Ben Franklin, who's probably my favorite historical figure, my greatest role model, and then Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And I grew up in a relatively white town in Western Massachusetts. We had a small minority population, but it was very progressive, and we were made very aware of kind of the inequities that exist in our world, and how people can be treated differently just based off of their racial their race, their sexual identity, their gender. And I read a lot of books that really just kind of opened my mind. I read this book, Black Like Me, The Invisible Man, and read Martin Luther King's writing, and just made me so overwhelmingly aware of this inherent privilege that I had, not due to anything other than the color of my skin. And so in the summer after my sophomore year of college, there was an opportunity to work for the governor of Massachusetts at the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination. And it seemed like an incredible opportunity to really, try to understand better the discrepancies that exist in the world. And because, I'm just by virtue of who I am, white, middle class, American, man, straight, tall. There's very
you have fallen into fortune by just your genetics.
Just by existing. Yeah, exactly. And so that opportunity was eye-opening, because whereas I was of the inequities that do exist in the world, actually seeing people's claims of discrimination and also realizing how insidious discrimination is today. It's not like it was back in the during the era of the civil rights movement, where it was just like explicit discrimination. It's much more implicit, and that's much harder to prosecute. I mean, of all the discrimination claims I was able to successfully proceed with, um, the fewest claims I was able to proceed with were race based, because so much of racial discrimination is so implicit that unless you can see a very clear trend of someone behaving in a racist way, even if they never say anything racist, it's very hard. And so there were only a few claims I was able to push forward with the prosecutor's office, but gender discrimination, sexual harassment, those were a lot easier. But regardless, it demonstrated to me how different my life could have been as someone that was a huge fuck up for literally all of my adolescence and childhood. If I had not been white, if I had not been middle class, if my parents were not well educated and invested in my education, and if I had just been a woman, you know, like my eccentricity would have just been labeled craziness. I mean, it was mind boggling to me, though, the amount of privilege I have, and it's something I've carried with me for a long time. And I receive a lot of flack on social media for being a social justice warrior, but I'm a big believer in social justice. I'm a big believer in pointing out these inequities that exist, because until we live in a world in which, you know, these sort of inequities don't exist, everybody's worse off. A world in which people are treated differently for biological or neurological differences, is not a world that is great to live in. There's a lot of work that we still have to do.
I agree, and the best way to do it is to get involved, which
or just make people aware. I mean,
right.
I can't
too.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with wealthy or well-to-do or privileged or successful young middle class or even older white men, and just made them aware of their privilege, because it's easy to feel like you're not racist, and I'd say a lot of these guys are not racist, but as we've learned in the wake of George Floyd, it's not enough to just be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to be aware of where you can take advantage of your privilege to benefit the people that are less privileged than you. And it takes an active effort. Not being a bigot is not good enough. You have to actually help combat bigotry when you're in a place of privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It's a little bit different for me, because in Russia, it's not something that I think was allowed to think for people in Soviet Union. And so
I think there's certain bigotries, whether it's against, especially against people that are gay, like homophobia is rampant there.
Yeah, right? I mean, in Russia, it's very dangerous to be gay. It's very, very dangerous.
And in America, I mean, we see this every day. It's super dangerous to be transgender. There's still so much work to do. And it exists at different levels in different societies. But bigotry is alive and well, and there's so much work to be done. And just because you're not the problem doesn't mean you're not part of the problem.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also taking personal responsibility. And for example, if you're born to be, lucky and be white, tall man in America, maybe when you're making decisions about being involved with people, which I know you've been very conscious about, but I'm addressing it to people to see, am I making my decision based on also this privilege? Am I so comfortable with this society working in this way to where I am making my work decision, purchasing decision, and other decisions, maybe hiring, based on that comfort. And am I, you know, or am I really looking equally at every single situation, and especially again in hiring?
And you never are. I never am, because the reality is that this kind of moral enlightenment, development, progression in humanity is, I mean, America had slaves 200 years ago. Like we're not in from an evolutionary perspective. Our brains are not evolved past our very tribalistic instincts that allowed us to survive and thrive and evolve over tens of thousands of years. Our brains are very much the same, and neurologically, we are inclined towards tribalism and working with and helping people that look and act like us. That's how we've evolved. And so you actually have to run counter to your own psyche and evolutionary predispositions in order to be actively helping the world and overcoming these biases and prejudices, and social inequities that exist.
Yeah, I wonder if the new generation, if children, so for example, as you know, I have a daughter, she's 8 years old, and I hope that when they are older, that generation is older, this will be things that are old biased. I hope.
Like I said, you can't wire out these inherent biases from our brains, but what millennials and Zoomers have that no generation has had before is an acute awareness of the world, not just as it's taught in high school textbooks, not just as it's presented on cable news, but we have the internet, we have digital communications, we have supercomputers in our pockets, and young people are just more aware of these inequities that exist and what's wrong. And so everyone's like points to the boomers who were these hippies and like protested the Vietnam War and were part of the civil rights movement and then destroyed the world. But the difference is that their perception of the world was very much shaped by what they saw on television, what they were told, whereas there's an incredible opportunity now, and it's not even an opportunity, it's just a reality, is that young people are acutely aware of everything going on in the world, for better or worse. And I think a lot of it's actually for the worse. I mean, there's a part of me that says like people under 18 should not be exposed to the internet. I really think like there's so many dark rabbit holes young people can go.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
They're so, like, I think brainwashing and psyops are one of the most dangerous developments in humanity that exists today. I mean, the ability for people to just be brainwashed by non-factual information on the web and then constantly be able to go down this rabbit hole that's validating all these uninformed or factually incorrect beliefs, because the internet has all these validating sources that will confirm any of your biases or prejudices. It's dangerous. And so it goes both ways. But I think overwhelmingly, young people are going to be more socially conscious and socially aware and much more active in ensuring that the inequities in the world are lessened. But it goes both ways, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, and I believe that we also can teach the children and we can teach younger generation to understand that information is something that comes with responsibility. And so, for example, and privacy as well, right? So when I allow my daughter to go to use the internet, we make sure that she uses it for things that are educational, and then I watch it, right? And also she understands that some things are privacy. She understands now through the experience of this year. We often discuss it that, understanding for people to evaluating what data means, understanding what data means and looking at it and really drawing kind of a decision that's based on real data and not just imaginary data, is a big problem. And how do we solve these problems? I don't think we have answers yet, but I do believe that if we have these discussions with our children, they will find better solutions and better interactions with the world. So yeah, I really appreciate your points. There are a lot of things that you said that I haven't considered. I definitely miss seeing you in person. It's been really challenging to be away from friends because, as you said, we've all been traveling the world and connecting, and and kind of expanding our communal consciousness, if you would, right, through these connections, because there's the gatherings, there's the conferences, but then there's the times when we spend time together and connect. And I'm just so grateful that we have the technology, that I can see you, I can see your body language, your eyes and everything, and connect with you and learn from you, because that's what we do best from each other. I also I am so amazed that you find time to do editing and that you also enjoy doing copy. It is one of the skills that you possess that is really amazing. When I read your writing, it's just to the point. It has the balance of the proper language that needs to be for that, with the emotion and creativity added to that. And so I had a question for you. Are you still are you still chief and editor for Distributed?
No, so my responsibilities got the better of me. As much as Distributed was a profitable magazine from its inception due to the relationships that the BTC Media folks had, just the effort that goes into printing a print publication, even if it's profitable, compared to the other businesses that they can be running, which are far more profitable and less time intensive, it didn't make sense for them to continue. I think they're selling the publication, and I wasn't able to give it my all because I had so many other ventures going on. Still receiving the first issue Distributed was one of the proudest moments of my life. Having something I'd seen from concept to finished product. It's part of what inspired me to start Made Man. But unfortunately, that was not something I could invest in, and unfortunately, the publisher found that it wasn't worth the effort that they put into it.
Do you exercise your brilliant creativity through writing other things? Have you considered maybe writing a book or?
So I've actually got a book nearly finished. It started as a memoir that was composed of a lot of my unpublished writing, starting from when I was like about 18 or 17 years old to now. And then I, after having this incredible kind of eye-opening road trip across the United States in April during the most intense part of the pandemic lockdown, I actually framed it within the context of driving across America, because Jack Kerouac's On the Road was one of the most inspirational books I ever read. And so, I've been speaking to publishers. I'm hoping to talk to Ryan Holiday's firm, which helps market books, because the reality is I don't need the capital from a publisher to even publish it. I really need help with marketing a book. And unfortunately, traditional publishers aren't good at that. But I'm really hoping to get that book out there by early next year, if possible.
That sounds amazing. I want a copy for sure. I
I'll
want
let you know.
signed copy, okay?
Of course.
So we talked a lot about different things, but we didn't talk about blockchain and Bitcoin, and it is something that excites people a lot right now. And so before our time is up, and I have to let you go because I know you're busy, though I would love to just keep you all day and keep chatting. I want to ask you about kind of what advice would you have for the next year for people that are looking at implementing the technology as the growth cycle starts going and a lot of interests are coming in. So kind of what traps should people avoid to avoid the nightmare what 2017 turned into?
Absolutely. So what people should do is look at what happened in 2017, 2018, even as far back as 2013 or 2012, and look at the startups and projects that have, been started and then, for some reason failed or been shut down. Because more likely than not, there's a company that's already tried to do what you're doing and hasn't succeeded. And now that is not to say it can't be done now. In fact, I'd say now is the time to retry a lot of the earlier concepts from the crypto space that didn't pan out due to scalability issues, infrastructure issues, not having the right blockchains or technology available, but learn from the mistakes of others. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. There's so much out there. There's so much open source code. There have been so many attempts at really brilliant innovation in this space that haven't panned out, just to wrong place, wrong time. And now may be the time to try a lot of these ideas. But what I unfortunately see is so many startups trying to build something that's been built before, not learning from the failures of previous implementation. So hands down, that's the best advice I can give.
That's awesome. I just realized my microphone wasn't plugged in.
I've heard you loud and clear.
Okay, so. Awesome. So I was articulate, but I just plugged it in. Well, that is so exciting, Jeremy. I am looking forward to hopefully seeing you sometime soon in the future.
Well, I'm much closer now in LA.
Yes, right. And it's been a while to go to LA. Thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you for opening up and really sharing who you are and what you're driven by. I think that the most important thing that I would love viewers to carry from this interview is to know that whatever empowerment, whatever desires to do things that you have inside of you, just go out and do it. Look at Jeremy. He's such a young entrepreneur, and the life he has lived, it would take 10 regular lives, just the standard lives, to be able to get to where he is right now. And I really think it comes from that one thing, is that if you're down, if just let yourself have it for a minute, for one day, go to bed crying if you have to, but tomorrow wake up, believe in yourself, and do it. Know that the persistence and perseverance will succeed. And in time of doubt, just think of Jeremy's brilliant spirit and light, and know that it's not an unpaved road, that others do that all the time. And if we all do it, we will together make a world a better place.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you for all the flattering comments. I really appreciate coming on this. I rarely get to philosophize on a public platform, so this has been really enjoyable, and I do hope to see you soon as well.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll speak soon.